Previously on The Walking Dead.
If I author a book today and I just put that hadith in it with some note in the bottom, it will be better than 1,000 Usool Thalatha books.
There is another hadith which is fight the mushriks, fight the polytheists, بأموالكم وأنفسكم وألسنتكم. So with your wealth, with yourself, and with, it's not all, obviously, disclaimer, it's not all the mushriks and all that, but with your tongues.
Yes.
How can you fight against someone with your tongues?
Sure.
Unless you go there.
You have to start watching yourself. When you're speaking about Allah and you're speaking about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, do so with great respect.
Come here. Come here.
You have a dirty tongue, boy.
If I author a book.
So we have the Burhan. Alhamdulillah, this was a book which is around over 80, it's about 80 pages, written by Mohammed Hijab. And this is a very interesting book because the Burhan is essentially Mohammed Hijab's re-articulation of Ibn Sina's argument.
ما شاء الله نبني أقوالنا على قول الله ورسوله لكن تقول قال أرسطو وقال ابن الخطيب وقال ابو العرفان شيخ لكم يدعى ابن سينا لم يكن متقيدا بالدين والإيمان. هذه أشياء فلاسفة ملاحدة لا يتقيدون بإيمان ولا يتقيدون بدين. وهذا بيت من عدة أبيات يصرح ابن القيم وكذلك الشيخ بأن ابن سينا كافر خارج من الدين.
And one unique thing about this book, I would say, brothers and sisters, is that it's quite applicable. What I mean by applicable is he takes, I think, most of the chapters and he says in application. There is a section that says in application. He's got fictitious characters called Richard and Betty. And I think one of them is an atheist, one of them is a skeptic, and they got their own background. And he tries to articulate the argument in a simplified way to Richard and Betty. I think I used to call this argument the argument from conceptual differentiation. It's a long term, it's a big term, or it's complicated words. But basically what it means is when you postulate that there is more than one thing, there must be something in place that allows you to make a distinction between one thing and the other thing. And if you can't do that, then you can't make the claim that there is more than one thing. But the point is, it is a really good book from the point of view that he's re-articulated the argument that really you can trace back to Ibn Sina, and obviously there's unique translations from Ibn Sina's work. What I mean by unique translations is that they haven't been translated before in the English language, I believe, and it's a re-articulation of this argument.
ابن سينا
عقيدته الإسماعيلية كما ذكر شيخ الإسلام ورد عليه شيخ الإسلام، له ردودا عليه كثيرة على ابن سينا، ويقول أنه إسماعيلي.
In Ismailism, what I say is that there is a trinity of itself, which says, which has three persons. It is God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Ali radiyallahu anhu, alayhi salam. And the third person in the trinity is the Al-Khan. And Ismailis in the dua, what they do is that they invoke all of these three.
So yeah, that's a good update from our beloved Hijab.
بين أيدينا هذه الرسالة ثلاثة أصول، وهي رسالة جليلة مختصرة مؤيدة بالأدلة من كتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم، في أصل عظيم من أصول الإسلام وهو العقيدة. وكان العلماء يهتمون بهذه المختصرات، يؤلفونها ويتعبون على اختصارها وتهذيبها، ثم يحفظونها لطلبتهم لتبقى أصولا عندهم وذخيرة عندهم يستفيدون منها ويفيدون منها. فالبداءة في هذه المختصرات هي الأساس لطلبة العلم، والعلم يبدأ شيئا فشيئا، يؤخذ من مبادئه وأصوله شيئا فشيئا ويتدرج فيه. وهذه المختصرات طريق إلى المطولات، لا يمكن أن تفهم المطولات إلا إذا فهمت هذه المختصرات وتدرجت منها شيئا فشيئا. ولهذا قالوا في معنى قوله تعالى: ولكن كونوا ربانيين بما كنتم تعلمون الكتاب وبما كنتم تدرسون، أن الربانيين هم الذين يبدأون بصغار مسائل العلم قبل كباره، يربون أنفسهم ويربون طلابهم ابتداء من المسائل الصغيرة إلى المسائل الكبيرة. وهذا شيء طبيعي، كل الأشياء تبدأ من أصولها ومن أساساتها ثم تكبر وتعظم بعد ذلك. أما الذي يهجم على العلم هجوما من أعلاه فهذا يفعل ولا يحصل على شيء، بينما الذي يبدأ من الأصول ويتدرج هذا هو الذي بإذن الله يسير مع الطريق الصحيح والاتجاه السليم.
الأصول الثلاثة وأدلتها لإمام الدعوة الشيخ محمد بن عبد الوهاب بن سليمان التميمي.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اعلم رحمك الله أنه يجب علينا تعلم 4 مسائل. الأولى العلم، وهو معرفة الله ومعرفة نبيه ومعرفة دين الإسلام بالأدلة. الثانية العمل به. الثالثة الدعوة إليه. الرابعة الصبر على الأذى فيه. والدليل قوله تعالى: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. قال الشافعي رحمه الله تعالى: لو ما أنزل الله حجة على خلقه إلا هذه السورة لكفتهم. وقال البخاري رحمه الله تعالى: باب العلم قبل القول والعمل. والدليل قوله تعالى: فاعلم أنه لا إله إلا الله واستغفر لذنبك. فبدأ بالعلم قبل القول
Beloved Hijab. Arguments for unnecessary being inspired by Islamic thought. Introduction. According to the most recent data published by Pew Research Center, 90% of Americans believe in a higher power. Although many other people in the UK and US no longer believe in a particular religion, only 5% are strident atheists in a manner which indicates acceptance of the arguments of the new atheists. Percentage-wise, this may not seem like much, but 5% is a significant proportion of the overall population. The fact that some people are rejecting faith in God would suggest that either they are unconvinced with the evidence for God's existence, or that arguments for God's existence have been demolished. Considering this, it may come as a surprise that Richard Dawkins, probably the West's most popular academic atheist, dedicates only 2 pages to refuting the design argument for God's existence and 5 to Aquinas' cosmological argument in the God delusion. The fact that new atheists seem to have not engaged with the analytic evidence of theists, combined with the fact that analytic philosophy dominates most Western university settings, gives theists a wide theoretical opening. They can reintroduce some of the most enduring natural theological arguments posited throughout history. Many of the arguments I will present in this book, I have used in applied settings for over a decade. In this time, I have had deep and meaningful conversations with hundreds of atheists and agnostics, particularly in the UK. I aim to give the reader a flavor of the type of interactions I have had with people from different cross-sections of society. I will reference my experience with 2 characters who I will make reference to throughout this book. These 2 characters are not actual subjects, but are hypothetical people or fictitious amalgams of people I have met. Subject A, who I shall call Richard, is the ultra-skeptic friend. He is 21 years of age and an ex-Christian. He entered university to study physics and philosophy. After taking a course on theories of the self, Richard had an existential crisis and became an atheist. Richard is disagreeable, extrovert, and non-caring. Subject B, who I shall call Betty, is a quiet person. Unlike Richard, Betty is an introvert. Betty is agnostic. Spends most of her time by herself, either in her room or in the library. When I speak to Betty, Betty takes time to listen to what I say before replying to me. Unlike Richard, Betty is less interested in provoking a reaction from people, but more in sharing ideas. Betty comes across as highly docile and placid, especially in public settings in which she has much social anxiety. Betty has had a troubled upbringing with sexual and physical abuse in her formative years. Throughout this book, where relevant, I will use my experiences with Betty and Richard as case study examples to outline some of the real-life complexities one may face in apologetic interactions. Much is at stake in the presentation of these arguments for God's existence. For many, the intellectual validity of theism is predicated on the soundness of these arguments and the degree to which they can be clearly articulated.
So yeah, that's a good update from our beloved Hijab.
إن كان تابع أحمد متوهبا فأنا المقر بأنني وهابي أفي الشريك عن الإله فليس لي رب سوى المتفرد الوهابي لا قبة ترجى ولا وتن ولا قبر له سبب من الأسباب كلا ولا حجر ولا شجر ولا عين ولا نصب من الأنصاب.
If I author a book today and I just put that hadith in it with some note in the bottom, it will be better than 1,000 Usool Thalatha books.